Hello and welcome to the Mushroom Murder Trial podcast. My name's Lisa and I have been covering this extraordinary case since 2023. Welcome to part 2 of Erin and Simon, the couple at the centre of this modern day tragedy. Just to clarify, it's taken a while for me to get this out because there's a suppression order at the moment on the information from the pre-trial hearings, so I've had to do a substantial rewrite. But before we start, please go to my newsletter and subscribe at mushroommurdertrial.com. It's free and informative. What more could you want? And I also have stickers. So if you would like a sticker that says Fact Forager, I can send it to you for free as well. Just send me through your postal address and off it will go. Now, please also rate and review this podcast because my content does really well on other platforms, yet most of my reviews are about the sound of my voice. So if you could maybe review it and say that I sound like a magpie at the start of spring, maybe not. But as my friend Jackson would say, namaste. Now let's move along because today we are following on from our last episode about the partnership of Erin and Simon. And I'm going to try and solve the $1 million question, which is, and continues to be, what was Erin Patterson's motive? I think I've nailed it. You'll have to let me know what you think. Here's a hint. It's from the glorious Lady Gaga, and it is Born This Way. Now, stay with me to get those details. But to catch us up in time, we are now in January 2014, where Simon and Erin welcomed a much-wanted baby girl after undergoing IVF. But by 2015, the marriage was again in trouble, despite their move back to Victoria to be closer to Simon's family. The relationship never fully recovered after 2 separate reconciliations in 2015. They had recoupled in the middle of that year and Erin moved back into the family home in Mason Street, Corumburra, in an effort to reconcile. By the end of that year, the couple decided to move forward with a financial separation, i.e. a division of finances. It was straightforward and handled without lawyers, an arrangement both considered fair. Erin kept some cash and took on the house loan debts owed to her by Simon's siblings, while her ex-partner retained the Mason Street home and the repayments of debt owed to them by other siblings. Around this time, Erin bought a property at Anthony Street, Corumburra for $400,000 approximately. So now I'm going to take you to Simon Patterson's testimony from the early days of the murder trial, starting June 1. In this section, he's replying to questions from the chief prosecutor, Dr. Nanette Rogers SC. They are, of course, discussing Erin. This is Dr. Rogers. Now, during the majority period of your marriage, was she doing home duties? Simon, yes, that was part of what she did. She enjoyed studying, so she studied various courses while we were married, including starting a vet science course. I know she had studied legal courses as well. I can't remember if that was before or after we were married, or at least been accepted into those. She studied, I think, a science degree for a little while as well when we were married. Now, Dr. Rogers then asked Simon about parenting the 2 children post-separation, and the timing of his views or his evidence jumps between 2021 and 2020. Was it important for you that it remained so? Yes. So they've just been talking about how they're on friendly terms, Simon and Erin. For what reason? Simon, a few reasons, partly because we're married and I think, and Dr. Rogers, and partly for the children? Yeah, partly because I think it's good to be friends with the person you're married to. And plus, I like to have a good relationship with anyone, especially my wife. But also, partly because it's really important to me. Simon's sobbing here, so can I have tissues, please? I reckon I'm going to, and then it says indistinct words. Then he says, thank you very much to the tissues. Yeah, it's important to me that, look, And then Dr. Rogers says, do you want a break? And he says, no, I don't. Thank you. His Honour, Mr. Patterson, we usually take a break about 11:45. Simon, yep. We could take the break earlier if you would like. No. Simon says, that's fine. I'm just struggling to answer the question, but I'll get there, Your Honour. It's okay. Dr. Rogers, can I put it this way? Did you continue to care for her? Simon, yes, very much so. Dr. Rogers, all right, you remained friendly. After the separation in 2015? Yeah, most of the time, yep. So what kinds of markers would you describe as an ongoing friendship? Simon, we seem to manage care of the kids well together, I think, and that was done actively and positively by both of us. Did you share them from time to time? Simon, yeah. So for pretty much the whole time, we made sure the kids had, were half-half, staying with their mum and with their dad and managing how it was for them, whether they were together with each of us or apart. Dr. Rogers, so essentially it worked well in terms of the sharing of the children because you both lived in Corumburra. He said, that's right. What about, did you message each other from time to time? Simon, we did a lot of messaging. A lot of communication it wasn't just for organisational for that time. Yeah, for quite a few years it was, and then Dr. Rogers says, about anything. He responds with banter and discussions about politics and interesting things. It was, yeah. Dr. Rogers, can I ask about family holidays? Did you go away together with the children? Simon, we did. Most of the family holidays, up until only recent years, were together. So we travelled overseas interstate on holidays at different times. Now, this is me, your podcaster. This next bit underlines how much of a liar Erin is. Simon says, including to Erin's mum in Eden quite frequently. Now, this is the woman who Erin told someone in our Facebook group basically stole her childhood, tortured her mentally, caused her an eating disorder. She mentioned that in court as well. But she used to go and visit her regularly. This blows me away because Erin gave everyone in the group the impression, well, most of the people in the group, the impression she didn't have much time for mum, but yet she was up in Eden a lot. What's that all about? It's very interesting, and Patterson, again, is an unreliable narrator. Okay, so now we're moving on to 2020. She moved to 84 Gibson Street, Leongatha. And Simon says, that's right. When she moved to that address, what was the arrangement in terms of the children? Were they living with her solely, or were they sometimes with her and sometimes with you? And was it a bit of a free and easy arrangement? Let me put it this way. At those particular houses that she lived in, Anthony Court, Shellcott Road, and then 46 Shellcott Road, over that period of time, were there sharing arrangements with the children as there had been before? Sorry, Simon says, I've lost my train of thought. Could you ask that again, please? Dr. Rogers, we might have already covered this, but after she moved into Anthony Court and the subsequent house on Shellcott Road, you continued to care for the children. We did, yep, says Simon. Dr. Rogers, how can I ask you about a house in Melbourne? Oh, apologies, she says. Now can I ask you about a house in Melbourne? Did you and Erin jointly own a house in Melbourne? Simon, yes, we did. Which suburb was it in? Simon, it was, what's it called? It was a unit in Mount Waverley, Sindel, which I guess is technically Mount Waverley. So we're finishing off from the testimony here in the transcript. But it's clear Simon and Erin's on-again, off-again relationship, it really rivaled Hollywood's most dramatic pairings. But this wasn't the stuff of fairy tales. Beneath the surface was the ticking time bomb in the form of Erin and how she chose to deal with conflict. Because their two lives intertwined like tangled threads, and they were impossible to pull apart no matter how much damage, as we've seen, But it makes me think of that movie Gone Girl with Ben Affleck. And he's married to a woman who's a bit of an ice princess. And her name's Amy. And she has a supposedly idyllic life with her husband, Nick, that's Ben. But it was a facade hiding her unhappiness and her brewing resentment. Erin too seemed to project the image of a cooperative wife and mother, even as her life crumbled and her actions grew darker and darker. Both women's lives raised the question, how much of what we see is real and how much is carefully constructed? Amy has an infamous line, "You think I'm the kind of woman who would let that happen?" which in her mind encapsulates her refusal to be a victim. So I wonder if Erin thought Simon was victimising her and she wanted to stand up to him some way. In my opinion, Erin's actions suggest a similar mentality, a determination to maintain agency no matter the cost. When scorned, both women appear capable of unimaginable things. Now, I had a look into the research around poisoners and what personalities they have. And Psychology Today notes that they resemble that of an immature child, spoiled, manipulative, and desperate to get their own way, regardless of the consequences. Poisoning demands careful calculation and deceit, making a crime suited to those who are cunning, creative, and avoid direct conflict. Poisoners often rely on subtle manipulation, both verbal and emotional, to achieve their objectives. Convicted poisoners frequently struggle with feelings of inadequacy, which they counteract with fantasies of dominance, a rejection of authority, and exploitative tendencies. They also have a toxic mix of inadequacy, rebelliousness, and a hunger for control. This is paired with a self-absorbed and exploitative way of relating to others. Many were either spoiled or emotionally neglected during their childhood. Erin claims she was emotionally neglected. And I know people are going to get upset with me saying, well, why did you go and visit your mum so much if you thought that she emotionally tortured you as a child? I don't know. But it's important to note here that her mother's dead. We've only really got Erin's side of the story. It's basically acting on impulsive desires, grabbing at life's rewards as thoughtlessly as a child steals sweets. But no one who knew Erin, and maybe not even Erin herself, would predict she was capable of such evil. But to understand her, you need to consider the nature of her crimes. She is rare and unique. According to the Australian Institute of Criminology, on average, 11 homicides occur in Australia annually involving extended family members, including in-laws, grandparents and cousins, with most incidents happening in residential locations. Marital conflict and violence, particularly involving in-laws, are common themes in homicides. Men are responsible for the majority, 88% of these killings, and the gender distribution of victims is similar to that of general homicides, so 63% male, 37% female. The research discusses the role of parents and in-laws in family homicides, specifically relatives on the involvement of these family members in lethal violence stemming from marital conflict and disputes. In cases involving these in-laws, it's noted that the conflict often resolves around marital violence and often the spouse is the victim of abuse. No comment there. Other family members, particularly in-laws, sometimes take on a protective role towards the abused spouse. This intervention can escalate into violent confrontations, leading to homicide, with in-laws becoming embroiled in the conflict. Wallace, 1986, highlights this pattern where a domestic dispute within a marriage spreads to include in-laws who may step in to protect the abused spouse. Now, this involvement can definitely intensify tensions, and the result can be fatal outcomes during clashes between the in-laws and the abuser. Research also touches on the broader dynamics of family homicides involving parents, where lethal violence is not limited to spouses but can go throughout the family, including children. Familiar conflict, especially where there is a history of abuse, it can spiral outwards and implicate other family members in violent acts. So my theory about Erin is, as someone who did one semester of psychology at Charles Sturt University 30 years ago, don't complain, I'm joking, okay? I got in trouble the other day for saying that Erin would be a terrible customer service worker. So I just have to say I'm joking. I may not be funny, but it's a joke. I don't really think I'm a psychologist. I think Erin was just born this way. I'll be interested to note when the sentencing comes down if she's the psychopath, because quite often psychopaths are born and then you have those who are made. Jeffrey Epstein, I used to have a podcast about him, and I decided I was going to look into his family because everyone says his parents were the nicest people in the world, including his brother, Mark Epstein. So I was like, where did this come from? How did he end up being so revolting? And I wasn't able to find anything. I went back 2 generations, interestingly too. I went back maybe 4 generations, and I've just recently found Erin's mother's side as well. And I think her grandfather was a war hero. What can you say? Anyway, more about that later. But I just wanted you to know that there are cases where sometimes people are just born this way. It's like genetics. I don't know anything about genetics, but you see what I'm saying. So to build on that, she's like remember in the 80s they had those beta videotapes and they weren't fit for service in normal operating circumstances. And I suppose if you look at it, we live in a world full of diamonds, but Erin is a cubic zirconia. She'd take a baseball bat to a beehive. So she's an unreliable narrator. Now, this is the other thing I've worked out too. So Erin said in court that her aunt on her dad's side, he only had one sister. There are only 2 kids in the family. She had ovarian cancer. No, she had leukemia. Don't lie, Erin. And I'm about to look at the other side of the family as well, because it gives us a big insight into how she operates. This fear of ovarian cancer, which I know so much about. And I remember listening to that when Mr. Mandy, her barrister, was questioning her about the ovarian cancer. I was shaken with anger because my mother had it. So it was a double whammy for me. I knew Erin. My mother had ovarian cancer, and I used to be on the board of Ovarian Cancer Australia. That hospital she said she was at, getting her elbow x-rayed, that's not where you go in Melbourne for an ovarian cancer diagnosis. I mean, she'd be straight in for surgery. It just made me so mad because it's such a terrible disease. Again, I've got chills. It still really upsets me talking about it. Anyway, let's move on. But Erin is a liar. But as we know, from now on, the Patterson family, throughout the years, the family dynamic between Simon and Erin was very normal and very cooperative. There were shared family outings and projects, and Erin was involving Simon in the build of her home because he's an engineer. So things were looking up for her by 2020, and then it just went so wrong. I mean, she's gone from designing her dream home on a bush block not that far from town in Leongatha. She paid for it, and she's very house proud and focused on making the house a place for the children and the family, which is when we get towards the end. And now we get to the beginning of the end. Simon was over at Erin's house picking up the kids one day, and she said she wanted to talk to him, and it was about his status on his tax returns. So picking up the kids, I would have been dropping off one of the kids at least. I think at the time she came out and said to me she wanted to have a chat to me about something, which I could see was a serious thing. So she sat in the car with me. She sat in the passenger seat, and she said that she discovered that my tax return for the previous financial year noted that we were separated. Before that, we hadn't got the government involved in the fact that we were separated at all before then. So she said that mattered, I think, for the family tax benefit. Come on, mate. You're not you, Simon. I'm not talking to Simon here. Erin, you're wealthy. That's family tax benefit is not for you. It's very annoying. So she would be obliged to claim child support off me, which had never happened before. So she pointed that out, and she was upset about it. So that is the beginning of the end. And we'll go into this in another episode because it's really fascinating how things just go. It was basically just a swipe of a pen to change his tax status. He said he would change it back, but no, it wasn't good enough for her. So whatever happened there was a bridge too far. So the tension continues to ramp up, and it ends with Simon saying that he wanted to work things out with Erin, but she'd gone away with the kids to New Zealand. So let's leave it there at the moment. 2023 was certainly going to be a nightmare of a year for the Patterson family. Thank you so much for listening today. For more information, visit my website. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter on mushroommurdertrial.com. Plus, my social media addresses are down the bottom of the show notes. Just search for the podcast, the Mushroom Murder Trial podcast, on most platforms. And if you are feeling like rewarding me for the thousands of hours I've spent on this work, I have a Buy Me a Coffee membership, link in the show notes, just $5 as a little thank you. Some of you have. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really do. So stay tuned as we continue to explore every angle of this case. I'm going to keep doing it. And notice the big guys, they've all taken off now. Well, I'm still here. So this is from the courtroom to her new life in the prison. We're going to cover it all. And my name's Lisa, and I'm with the Mushroom Murder Trial podcast. Have a fabulous day. Thanks. Bye.